Alright everyone, welcome back. So our next topic here, continuing to look at the Renaissance, we're going to look at writing of the Renaissance today. So our objectives and standards to understand how writers of the time addressed Renaissance themes and our standards. Take a moment there to read that as well, please. And our desired result. What ideas of the Renaissance appeared in writings? So a change in writing. So art and artists were not the only things that were changing during the Renaissance. Remember, we've mentioned this a couple of times that, a lot of times people talk about the Renaissance, they focus on art and things like that, but there are other things changing as well. Example, in our lesson today, we're going to talk about how writing changed, and we'll talk about how that influenced people as well, but also government, culture, society in general. So many Renaissance writers are going to begin to push new and publish new ideas and thoughts. Now, they're especially going to focus on how men and women could become more powerful in the world if they chose. Remember, that's a big theme of the Renaissance, right? That, being more than just kind of here on earth, doing your daily duties, going to work, going to bed, things like that. The Renaissance wants people to enjoy themselves and also do their duties, but also, have some fun and also try to make themselves better. So writers of the Renaissance are going to talk about those ideas, about making oneself better or different ideas on how a person can make themselves better. That's a big theme of the Renaissance that writers will publish about. So Baldassare Castillon. A most widely read handbook of the Renaissance was the Book of the Courtier by Baldassare Castillon, and it described manners, learning, skills, and virtues that members of the court should have. So remember that members of the court, if you don't know this already, or may need some refreshing, that members of the court were people who were kind of under a king or queen, helped them with their duties, things like that. So they're basically close advisors or friends of the king or the queen. So this book was strictly pretty much addressed to members of the court. So for example, some of the advice that Baldassare gives is that men should be athletic but not overactive. So in other words, they shouldn't really be, just, totally, active all the time. They should be good at games like cards or things like that, but they shouldn't be a gambler. They should play music and they should know literature and history. In terms of women, women should be graceful and kind. They should also be lively, meaning they should be friendly, they should be outgoing, but they should also be reserved as well. And he mentioned something else known as outer beauty. So women should have some outer beauty to them, and things like that. So Niccolo Machiavelli. Now there was a different kind of handbook that will be written by Niccolo Machiavelli. So Niccolo Machiavelli had studied Roman history. He had also been a diplomat, and he had observed many foreign kings and princes in foreign courts. So he writes something called The Prince, which is published in 1513, and it's going to offer guidance on how rulers can gain power and also maintain power as well. So here's some of the advice from Machiavelli. During the times of ancient Greece and Rome, leadership was a high ideal. And Machiavelli kind of goes back and says, leaders aren't always so honest and truthful, right? He kind of looks at this and goes, our kings and queens and princes and all our leaders, they're not as honest as they seem they are, like, the Greeks and the Romans had portrayed them as. The book looked at real rulers, and stressed that the end justifies the means. What this means is what you're doing in the end going to justify what you're going to do to have to get there. Okay, that's a tricky concept for a lot of people to understand, but just think about it that, is what you're going to do to get that test grade and how you're going to get it, is that, legal, is that good or moral, things like that. So that's basically what Machiavelli is saying. Is the outcome that you're going for and how you're going to get there, ideal and just and moral. Now, Machiavelli does urge rulers to use whatever methods were necessary to achieve their goals, and sometimes that meant lying to the people they represented, or if a king had to lie to his subjects, and maybe not be as honest with them, to get, what he or she needed to get, that was a good thing. In Machiavelli's opinion, saying, you don't always need to be, this high ideal subject. Now, speaking of that, Machiavelli says that he is an enemy of opposition and corruption, which you might go, well, how's he an enemy of opposition and corruption if he's, saying all these different ideas that kind of seem to limit people and question people's role? But what Machiavelli does do in the long run is students of government have now argued that his realistic view of politics helped raise important questions about the nature of government and the use of power, which we'll talk about that when we get to the age of absolutism. But it also can be applied today where, sometimes we question, the president or Congress or whoever's in charge, about what they're doing. So Machiavelli does kind of put that into people's minds of the Renaissance of higher thinking and, being creative, and questioning things, right? Big part of the Renaissance is questioning things. So Machiavelli does help people begin to question kings and queens, which people really hadn't done before the Renaissance. All right, so our closure. What ideas of the Renaissance appeared in writings? Think about Castiglione with talking about improving oneself and things like that. And also think about Machiavelli, about what do rulers do to control people, do the ends justify the means? And think about, Machiavelli kind of saying, hey, this is the realistic view of politics. And, this is how, has to deal with people questioning things as well. All right, I hope you have a great rest of your day or night. Remember to include this information in your weekly summary, and I will hopefully talk to you all soon.